Yep, this is the second part of the Firenock class in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. You notice the Firenock catalog is actually a textbook. If you really take your time from front to back, you'll learn how the company evolved. We just talked about the nuts. Now we're going to talk about the vane. As you remember, when we first started with the arrow right here, we start at the very end, which is not where we start the company. The next product we sell is indeed the vane. Very interesting. Everybody think a vane is a vane is a vane. It's telling aerospace engineer. A wing is a wing is a wing. No, it is not. Then people will tell me that, get it out of the way. We humans are using feathers for all these years. What's so special about your vane? First of all, it is not a vane. It's an F. It is not a vane. It's a wing system. And traditionally, a vane would do this. And they have their offset. So when the air hit it, it'll cause it to turn this way. Which, what are we really doing? What you're inducing drag and give up energy to create rotation to stabilize an arrow. If you talk to anybody that is played for a long time, it's really not needed if the bow is well tuned. Now, and then ask yourself this question: how come the bow is not well tuned? How come the arrow is not well tuned? Because it's close to impossible. It's an imprecise, inconsistent machine. Because it involves the human. Yes, there's shooting machine out there, I know. But that's not one of us, at least as far as I know, for me. So, by giving up lift, by giving up forward momentum for spin, what spin rate are we talking about? An average arrow at 300 feet per second will burn between 2 and a maximum of 5 revolutions when you hit the first 20 yards. Ask yourself this question: how big a deal is this? After all this complaining, helical, offset, blah blah, so on, you are looking at 2 to 5 revolutions for the first 20 yards.
Doesn't do much anyway.
Now then ask yourself this question: what do you think this helical offset you give up?
Drag.
Drag. What else?
Speed.
And what else?
Kinetic energy.
And one of the most effective that everybody overlooked.
Lift.
Cross wind signature.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What is cross wind signature? When an arrow moving forward, when the drag force is being induced, the resulting surrounding air column that being affected by it, this column of air, the diameter of it, is defined as a crosswind signature. Let me give you some specs that will shake you out real bad. A 2.5 degree offset arrow using laser. I'm defining every arrow at 246 arrow, which is standard gold tip 75-95. The crosswind signature for those at 300 feet per second, 2.5 degree offset. That crosswind signature is close to 12 inches. That means 12 inches of air is affected by that 2.5 degree offset arrow. So that it will barely spin. Barely. Now then you go into a situation like a quick spin, which now do a little bit different. They got a kicker right here. And bridges right here. It will move it up to 12 revolutions. That's what you're giving up. Besides kinetic energy, forward momentum, speed, friction, drag, the crosswind signature from a 12 inches is actually closer to 18 inch.
That's not a blade.
No, a quick spin.
Oh, quick spin.
That's the reason a few people will tell you, when you when you move the quick spin, you better off jump at least 25 grain in fuel points. Because the drag is so significant. Because there is such a humongous amount of energy released to the surrounding. Guess what why is this cross spin signature, this diameter, I call it big D, so important? Most people in indoor will never care about it.
Wind.
Because this is what the wind will view your arrow when your arrow is passing through it. That means I don't care how big or small or size your shaft is. This is the resulting size of the arrow when it passes through. You got an 18-inch of wind column passing through the air, a 12-inch of wind column passing through the air. What do you think it's going to do to the arrow when there's a 25 miles per hour wind blowing? That means, very simple, go and hold a paper tube of this size, and then hold a paper tube just this size in 25 miles per hour wind and see what's going to do to it. Now hold one that's 18-inch. You'll be flying. And you ask yourself, why is the arrow not going forward, and then how much leading do you need to do? Oh, a lot of people will argue, it is the back of the arrow. That's the whole column of air that's still moving. It's like a boat. When it goes through the water, the rate behind it have no effect of how fast the boat goes, right? Wrong. Always. Because that's where it started. Now, how do we overcome all these issues? And not to mention, now let's look at veins. A typical vein. This is its cross-section. What is it really? The cross-section of it is technically a plank. Have anybody looked at what a cross-section of the Aerovane is? In all places, it's closer to this. From top to bottom. What does this shape will induce and guarantee anything with hydrodynamics or aerodynamics? What does this shape will absolutely guarantee? Wobble. Wild and flutter. Exactly what that is. Which means that itself will constantly causing this entire piece to wobble. Now, look at the side of the vein. Now, we're talking a cross-section view now. Let's look at top view. This is what most veins look like. At best, around here and a pointed here. What does the Aerovane look like?
Airplane.
Exactly, actually more like a fish. But if you take a closer look, after the first part, this is actually more like this part right here. This part is so critical, most people never understand. The wow and flutter of this action is even more dramatic. It's critical. That's what everybody's hearing. That brrr. It's not just this, it's this. This is not having any. Why? This is the foremost shape of the aspect ratio right here. The R value. Not R value. This is R ratio. Is identical to an R's wing. Why is this number so critical? That's the only number we as humans have discovered. Only one animal, which is an owl, is able to go through air with total silence. It's not round. It is not flat. It is not oval. It's a really weird number. It's very close to a lattice. But that shape is what makes everything quiet. The falcon's wing is very sharp. But guess what? The moment you go full dive, you got that high pitch of the air braking. And this have absolutely no sound when you pass by. A lot of people will say go into the silent mode. Guess what? They're pushing that mini flapper in the front to give into this ratio shape. Is this the most efficient shape? No. But it's the most quiet shape. You can be behind somebody not knowing, or you can be 50 yards apart. Now you can use a knife instead of a gun. That's the beauty of this shape. reason the entire Aerovane is actually, if you look at it, is a small pyramid with an out tip. That's the reason the Aerovane feels extremely stiff. But if you look at the drawmeter meter, we are only 2 drawmeter higher than the normal. The Aerovane is only 92 drawmeter compared to the industry, which is 90. Technically, it's only about 65%, 65, because every 3 drawmeter is harder. We are about 60% harder. But you feel like 200–300% harder. No, we're only about 60% harder because of the pyramid shape. It's like, this is the easy example I can demonstrate. See that, this paper? But the moment I open it and form a pyramid shape,
More structure.
that's exactly why we have this. Now, why is this important when we go into vanes? Because now we're going to go into why an Aerovane actually spins. An Aerovane use airfoil. Airfoil is based on the linear principle. When two boundary layers traveling at different speed to a same environment, whoever travel the highest, faster side will have lower pressure. That defined as lift, which means that on this surface, the air that travel here and the air that travel here, because it's a longer distance, the force of lift applied. Everybody understands this because we all grew up in the airplane age. And people will argue all day long. Archery has been thousands and thousands of years. It's no big deal. Just like Professor Sailing, one of the best moments I learned from him when I first designed Aerovane. That was the year of 100-year anniversary of the Wright brothers. We humans barely learned how to fly for 100 years. All the years we are just gliding or thinking we are flying. Until you understand aerodynamics, boundary layers, that's no flying. That's gliding. It's like floating paper airplane in the air. That's not flying, that's gliding. Flying means lift. Now, when you look at Aerovane, why is this so critical? All 3 vanes has to be placed with plus and minus 1 to maximum 1.5 degree in AV2 and 0.25 degree in the AV3. Why is it so critical? First of all, let me tell you my specs, so at least you know why it's important to me. Aerovane 3 is 0.07 grain variance. When you buy vanes, I don't care which pack, which box, which pack, you put it out. They are 0.07 grain from each other. Why? Single cavity virgin flow. They are 100% identical, so is the die. The Aerovane this one is older. This is only 0.1 grain variance. Do you know what the industry standard for blazer is? 2 grains variance. 2! This is 0.1. That's 2,000%, my friend. Compared to this, that's 2,700%. Why is this so critical? They are there. What's the big deal? Because they are not dragging. When you're dragging, the wind force on each of the wing, first of all, you know they are already not good. When you're putting the blazer or whatever using 2.5 degree offset. Are you sure it's 2.5? Okay, good. Because I don't know anybody, I look at everybody, are you sure it's 2.5 degree? It's 2.23 or 2 or 1.75? Oh, it's 2.5 degree, are you sure? That's fine, at least mapping. You'll be amazed how many, oh, that's what they said. No, what it said doesn't mean it worked. Go there and talk to an airplane engineer and tell him that you want the jumbo plane off by 2 degrees and see what he say to you. How about I set your rear rudder off by 1.5 degrees and see how fast you fly. I think you'll be coming down so fast it's not going to be funny. This is not, quote unquote, a drag system. That means every one of them will have a perfectly straight lift. In other words, you're looking at the resulting factor of an axis of your aero. If they are not good, the easiest way to explain this is imagine yourself looking at a ceiling fan, and you decide to put a dime and tape it at the end of a ceiling fan. Will barely spin how fast? Maybe 2 revolutions a second? What's happening to that ceiling fan? Now, give you some specs now. Aerovane 2 at 300 feet per second on a normal shaft, the average is instead of 2 to 3 to maybe 5 to maybe 12 revolution is approaching 60. And the Aerovane 3 we know is already exceed 120. You say, wait a minute, you don't get things for free. Nobody says it's free. What are you giving up? Think through the process with me. Yeah, no more drag. Well?
Less wind planing. So you're giving up the wind and it's not going to drift as much?
No, actually we'll go to that further. We're just talking about from this plane to this plane. What have you give up? You give up the ease.
Drag for lift.
Right. You're giving up the drag and you exchange it for lift. But you also, based on design, we take care of the fluttering.
Yeah.
We take care of all the noise issue. Remember, noise, yes, noise is a very cheap energy, but it's still energy giving away. The worst energy you can lose is fluttering. The in control and inconsistency of your aero that you're going to control. Because when your aero is fluttering, and the aero is going through the artery baggerocks with your veins fluttering, and the wind blowing, remember, it's a chaos when you first launch the aero in the first 15 yards. That's the reason most people say don't tune anything below 20 yards. Because nothing is ready. Which point are your arrow pointing at? You don't know. Because when the arrow flies out into the air, it's actually doing this. What is the point pointing down? The point is pointing downwards. It's not pointing forward. Now it's the point is pointing upwards. These 2 points are supposed to be steady, right? And this thing is supposed to be fluttering. When it flutters at this moment, what the resulting direction? That way, that way, that way. It's a control chaos. And right now, try to get all those chaos out of the equation and go straight into, hopefully, do what it does. To be frank with you, when the arrow actually flies, it's a remarkable feat. The moment you think through the process and you look at every single small motion camera, the arrow will flex like this, okay? Going out like this very accurately. The vein itself, you can see the vein twirling and turning and twirling and turning, all pointing in the wrong directions, which have no consistency. You're giving up all those chaos for consistency. Consistency costs money. And that's the reason it had to be so precise. Now, next things. When the fluttering is no longer there, the energy is conserved. When the sound is no longer there, the energy is conserved. When all is pointing in the same direction and it's rotating, what's it going to do? It's going to store the energy. Energy is never wasted, but only converted. And in these cases, it's converted into rotational energy. It's stored in the mass of the shaft as rotational mass. A lot of people say, oh, use Aerovane, I just hit higher, I hit higher, I hit higher. It is not because the arrow is faster. The arrow, with every single arrow that launches out of the bow, is only at one factor, weight. That's the only factor. You can shoot a bad shaft with vane and whatever, they will launch out of the bow the same speed based on mass, unless it's a ridiculous air resistor. None of the arrow is. So the first one, when you launch the arrow, they all will fly at the same speed, based on weight, no matter what shape they are. The moment they pass the first 20 yards, aerodynamics, spine consistency, concentricity, all the rest will kick in. That's the reason Aerovane becomes such an important factor, because the moment we look at the Aerovane, the moment we take away the drag factor, the noise factor, all the energy waste, and look at what an airfoil does. What does an airfoil really do? It provides you lift. But during this airfoil, there's a lot of things we can do. Micro-texturing. What does micro-texturing do? Micro-texturing allows you to control the boundary layer of the air to adhere to the surface of the vane at the longest time. Because if I don't do that, just like when I first introduced Aerovane 1, I polished the mold beyond belief. My veins are shiny. I sent it to my first meeting with Professor Salick. Look at this vein, isn't that beautiful? The first thing I look at it, this is a vein for Aero? He said, yes. How come so shiny? How come so shiny? I said, I polished it. So you go through air faster. You look at me like, you idiot. I said, isn't that faster, smoother? He said, no. By making it soft, I'm forcing the air to lift and do this. I'm creating a vacuum vortex right here. That's the reason my first Aerovane was so stable with broadhead, because it's so inefficient. But because the airfoil is so big, it sort of worked. But the cost is so much that after 3 meetings, we have discovered that even with his knowledge, we are not able to find out what an Aerovane 1, which an airfoil that looked like this, would do. There's just too much going on. Because every single one of them do something. And we just cannot use a pure result to do it, not to mention the cost of this is nearly double of this. And nobody wants to use a 9-grain vein. Actually close to 11, which is half a grain lighter than the original X-Men. So we go ahead and cancel Aerovane 1 altogether and focus on Aerovane 2.
I was wondering what happened with that one, because it kind of just disappeared.
Yep, for the traditional guys, they love it.
Yeah.
Because it did what it's supposed to do and more. It can handle reasonable low speed, it can handle crosswind, it can handle big broadhead. But it's so heavy vein. And everybody loves the look of a Blazer. So I say, okay, I will merge these 2 corners of my Aerovane together. And I end up with a vein that looks like this. And that becomes the Aerovane 2. The Aerovane 2 is also the first time I brushed with other companies that have patents. Believe it or not, there is people out there who don't know what they're doing, they own patents that you can step on, because there's only so many things to do things. The Aerovane 2 was designed, and we are very lucky with the help. To be frank with you, that was one of the nice company out there, New Archery product. After Aerovane 2 was first introduced, the left side and the right side texture is totally different. We want to optimize the airflow, but New Archery product have a pattern. The left side roughness is not equal to the right side of roughness. So I bought a license from them for the last batch of the Aerovane. I sold them, and now I remake Aerovane 3. 2, the both side textures are 100% identical. So we have no more patent or license issue. So they are one of the few nice guys out there. Okay. Knowing that, what did Aerovane 2 really do? You notice that identical texture on both sides. If you look at the book, on page 8, in the center diagram, the D and D will show you exactly what I mean by a thin pyramid. But when you move to the forward, yes, the airfoil itself takes over. But you look at it, The Aerovane actually have 3 micro-texturing on it. The first section is the heaviest, that's a 402. Then is the 201, and finally the 150. That was my knowledge of my introduction to surface texturing based on airfoil. On airflow, not airfoil. Actually, Aerovane is a very complex airfoil. See right here? This is actually a delta vortex, right here. The delta vortex will form right here on the leading edge, and it flies. That's the reason it required the maximum of microtexturing. And since no matter if you take a closer look, if you imagine this is actually an airplane on both sides. This is a pure delta wing system, isn't it? And the delta wing system has benefits, but it also has downside. The delta wing vortex on the leading edge is very, very complicated to deal with. And I was lucky enough with the Professor Lele out of Stanford University help. We're able to eliminate a lot of the issue in the leading edge by applying the owl. The owl have handled all the sound, the issue, and so on with that magic number. That's the reason our delta wing behaves like it does. Most delta wing will not function in any shape or form. But what is the downside of this delta wing? It is not efficient. The moment you pass the magic 400 miles per hour, it's not going to work. But I don't believe our archery projectile will ever reach that. Even at 400 feet per second, we are only at 280 miles per hour. We know that about 200 miles per hour, which is 300 feet per second, that pretty much is what everything changed. I'm not going to be whirring at 400 miles per hour. Not within my lifetime, at least. I'm not going to see that. So I'm willing to give up a little bit inefficient on the out-wing quietness. But what does it also do? If you look at the Aerovane structure and the way I built it, there was one more thing that built into this vane. You notice that the texture, the thickness from the front to back. This actually allow me to let this vane do something that Professor Lele helped me. He actually can behave like a live animal. This is where the eyesight factor kicked in. The plastic elasticity of this piece, the moment when under high speed, the lift factor is all in the front of the vane right here, right? Which means this is going to be highest hump, which means it's going to lift. You're going to push. When it push, guess what? The resulting vortex, the vortex is going to push it back this way. So the entire vane actually going to behave like this. Now what does that do? This is actually now not just rotation. It actually totally minimized the delta vortex and the leading edge problem that every single vane on this planet have. Think about it. The vane is first straight.
Yeah.
Now you're flying at high speed. What is the angle of attack? Very bad. It's turning this way. The moment it begins to turn based on the lift, it will self-adjust and find its best leading edge based on requirement. It is a learning piece of plastic, which is what aerodynamic elasticity memory effect is. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So when you don't know, find the best and learn from the best. You find out that it is just so wonderful knowledge, you know, it's absolute. There's no way around it. I'll let you guys absorb that a little bit first.
Well, that's what, you know, the big thing is now you know how bad the stuff that we're using is when it flies. You know?
Now, at this moment, one thing, since it's not using drag, what is the cross-wind signature of this vane?
How much?
Now, what is the maximum air it's going to disturb? There's no drag. Remember, when you drag something, there's action and reaction. is that action and reaction cause the column to move. Since there's no action and reaction, it's only about this far. So assume the air is both. That is the width of the entire crosswind signature, which means why this thing will fly in 25 miles per hour wind like the wind doesn't exist.
Now, one of the answers I get is, or one of the questions I get, you know, when people are, and I really don't have an answer for them, but they say, well, I'm only shooting at deer at 20 yards. Why does all this stuff matter to me? Well, I know they're going to have a harder hitting arrow.
It's like the same thing.
Yeah.
Most people only used to drive 20 miles to work. Why does the car matter to you? The life, the world as we know is changing. People in old days, when they have an arrow, they're lucky to hit 20 yards. Now, if you got a really good bow or crossbow with the right arrow, anything 100 yards under, don't tell me about ethical, whatever that is. It's the guy who pulled the trigger. If you can live with yourself, do whatever you need. Even back then, people take a Hail Mary shot. And believe me, if my whole family's life is on the line to get that deer, I would take a Hail Mary shot any day. If I'm dead, who cares about ethics?
Well,
at least at that moment.
You know, I can see where everything benefits the hunter that has the skills to shoot out further distance, but you know, the biggest question I get is, why does it matter to me if I'm shooting less than 20 yards? So
when the moment on the day that you're chasing a deer for the last whole season, and the final day that you can hunt the deer is 35 yards in front of you, and the 25 miles per hour wind, you're going to look at it and let it go. That's the difference. It's like, you can walk to school, you can walk to work every day. When the day snows, you have nowhere to walk. The guy with a snowplow can go, you can't. Pretty much the same thing. The guy with the most toys win. And I don't intend to lose. Okay, now, after you've seen Aerovane 2, you've got a basic concept why Aerovane 2 is such efficient factors. And I did not introduce Aerovane 3. I actually reversed the process. When I first introduced Aerovane, I go in, I call Bisenberger. I talk to Alan. I say, you know, can you make the jig better? I really need it to work. I actually bought 7,000 brass bars and give to everybody that I know of, so they can use the Aerovane and try it. And the result is all over the place. Why? I found out that it's not the vane, it is not the arrow, it's the jig. Some specs. A Bisenberger jig is not 0, 120, 240. It is not. It is 0, 118, and whatever end up to be 122. There's 4-degree variance between the second and third notch. That's just on the index. Then when you put a knock inside a line for alignment, this is the kind of variance you're getting. Then you also add to the factor of the magnet, the front end hook. The average Bisenberger overall variance is 3, minimum, to as high as 17 degrees per 3 vane fletched. A Joe jig is between 5 and 12. I need 1 to 1.5. So if you own a Bisenberger, what do I do to at least able to fletch Aerovane 1, Aerovane 2?
Zenith upgrade.
Zenith upgrade. That will bring you to within 1 and 1.5 to 2 degrees. At least you are there. What you are controlling is the index. First of all, they are indeed 120 now. The second thing you did is that you control the knock and slot movement, because it's also the same design. It's based on the ID of the shaft, which you know is the only thing you can trust. So right on the get-go, after this 2, this 3 degree and the slot, you instantly drop this from 3 to 17 to 1 to 1.5. That's the reason I hold back. I did not introduce Aerovane 3 for 2 more years. Actually 3 more years, until I give you guys my Aerovane jig. Why is this jig so important for the entire project? Because we are now able to control the 3 airfoil. Because it's a resulting of the lift. It is indeed a circular lift. People say, how come you have such huge numbers compared to the rest? What is this thing fighting? When an airplane flies, remember, this is 720 Ronalds. That's based on the air frontal area. That's how much lift you got. It's like slapping a Hercules wing on the F1 on the basic F-16. It's a huge, huge, gigantic wing. The amount of lift it gives out is horrendous. When this is lifting, what's it fighting?
Gravity?
No, this is not fighting gravity. This is a circular lift. What's it fighting? Nothing. It is fighting air for rotating. When the airplane flies, remember, it's fighting against gravity. When this turns, it's fighting nothing. You keep turning. The more you turns, the easier the lift, the faster it turns, the faster it will turn, and the faster it will turn, until the energy is optimized and it just keeps turning and turning and turning. Because it's not fighting nothing. That's the reason it becomes, imagine this, you're using the lift ability of airplane wing on every single wing on the same identical direction you're going towards. You're fighting nothing. That's where the magic is. Since you're fighting nothing, the rotation is the only thing. When you have rotation, what do? You store the energy. You cancel all the major harmonics. Now you have rotation. Your arrow become what? A gyro. Now you literally change from an archery projectile to a ballistic projectile. Your arrow just become a gyro system. What if when you throw a gyro out? Nothing is going to affect it. I mean, on top of the airfoil design, just because it's a gyro, air cross air have no effect on it. If you are playing with a gyroscope, you know when it stands up, it will defy gravity. You are now have a gyro projectile. Isn't that wonderful? See, the moment you understand how this whole thing comes together, the gyro projectile do such wonderful, wonderful things. Now, what are the downside of this? And let me just throw this out so everybody knows. The precision of the jig, the precision of the gluing, and the cost of the jig is the only downside. If you target hunt, if you target shoot, if you hunt, you'll find out that 90% of the broadhead won't fly with this. They are meant to speed within 2, 3, 5, maybe 12. Now you're pushing 60 and 120. What do you think is going to happen to that broadhead? The broadhead is gigantic, is a gigantic piece of fan. Now you're putting a fan in the air at high speed with wind. If anybody got some concept with fan, fan on number 1, fan on number 3 will actually hit you right in the face. That's the reason we had to come up with broadheads designed concentrically, which I will address when we go into the field point and insert of this class, why they are important. Now, let's take a look at Aerovane 3. This is a very, very interesting design. Professor Lick do a fantastic job helping me. Look at this. People always look at Aerovane like this. That's the wrong way to look at it. You don't look at it straight. You should look at it like it is the left side of a wing. Then you will instantly understand how beautiful Aerovane 3 is. Look at it like this way. Look at you from towards you. It's the left side of a wing. What is this now? If you look at it that way, you instantly know that this is our winglet. Anybody in commercial airline, in any place will tell you, what does the winglet do? It saves a huge amount of fuel. It is the most efficient airfoil design that everybody has to use unless you just have money to burn. Delta Airlines saved over $1.2 billion on this piece. It's published. Okay, you know this Aerovane 3 is also very soft. And people say, oh, you use different material. No, I did not. It's the same material. How come it's so soft? It's the thickness. Remember I told you the fact that one time the Aerovane 2 have a license issue? I have to resurface Aerovane 2 and redimple it. That process caused it to be thicker because you grind away and put dimples. This is original what Aerovane 2 looked like in thickness. Now with this thickness, what do you gain? Remember, the pyramid, everything is still there. Which means that these have even more advanced, more capability in aerodynamic elasticity memory. But you notice the winglet was strategically put in this specific spot, and how I fold it. It actually folds 1.5 degree this way and 0.9 degree this way. What does it do? It gives the structural integrity on this section right here. Which means when the airflow passing this area, guess what? It do not allow flow out. Anybody, since you've been airplane, what's flow out means?
Flow out?
Yes, on the airplane, on the tip of the wing.
The way it comes over it?
Correct. That means when you lift, when you increase the airflow, when the air going through over the wings structure, when the speed goes high, it do not go forward. You go to the lowest point, then you go out of it, which means now you decrease the speed of the wind, which now you decrease lift. By having a winglet like this, what does it do? It do not allow the air to flow out. That means the same column of air had to fly at a higher speed when it leaves the wing. Which, since there's a variation in difference in speed, what do you gain? Lift. And the lift efficiency is actually closer to 350%. But it will be impossible for us to think this will be spinning an angle of about 270 feet revolution, right? So after everything said and done, we just know it's about 120. Now you know why Aerovane 3 is such an efficient archery projectile. Vane projectile. Will make an archery projectile so efficient because the aerodynamic elasticity memory, the entire delta vortex, the aerodynamic elasticity memory is in such optimized. And one more thing, because we know how to make this, we have improved our mold making process. The Aerovane 3 is only about 5 grain compared to 7. Which means that if you flush the thing right, the Aerovane 2, Aerovane 3 crosswind signature on a normal half-inch projectile will never exceed 2-inch diameter. That means this is as big as the wind will go through. And also explain why the crossbow guys who use Aerovane 3 able to hit 35 miles per hour at 105 yard with 2 or 3 inch group, which is unheard of. And they're actually doing it. Which you know, in most cases, when you throw an arrow like that, you'll be about like 3 feet on the left when the wind blows. Yeah. And that's exactly what it does. This will conclude our Aerovane section. We can go lunch. So what do you guys think?